Thank you all for joining us. I'm going to turn things over to Steve Greenlee.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us. I'm Steve Greenlee, the editor of the Press Herald. Thank you for reading our six-part series, Long Way Home. It was an enormous but rewarding undertaking. 6 reporters and 2 photographers spent months learning as much as they could about the people who are finding refuge in Maine. More than 1,000 asylum seekers have come to Portland this year alone. It's a critical time to be talking about this issue. The city's shelters are full, and the region's ability to assist has reached an inflection point. At the same time, new Mainers are enriching our culture and filling jobs in the midst of a labor shortage. There are many views out there about the amount of assistance that the state should or can provide, but I think we can all agree on one thing. We're talking about human beings fleeing dangerous situations and coming to an unfamiliar place where they have to relearn nearly everything. And they deserve our compassion. In reporting this series, our journalists tried to answer many questions. Why do they leave the lands where they grew up, enduring treacherous journeys for a chance at new lives? Why do they choose Maine? What is life like for them when they arrive? And what is the state's capacity and responsibility to help them? Personally, I learned a lot from this series, and I hope you found it valuable and enlightening. And tonight we'll learn a bit more. I'll turn things over to Rachel Ohm, our superb City Hall reporter, who has been writing about the asylum seeker situation in Maine for the past 2 years and was one of the lead reporters on this series. She'll introduce our panel of guests. Well, one last word. We can do this kind of work only with the support of our subscribers. If you are a subscriber, you have my deep gratitude. And if you don't yet, please consider signing up so we can continue to do this kind of work. Rachel, take it away.
Thanks, Steve, and thanks to everyone who's joining us tonight, and to our panelists. I want to take a few minutes to introduce everyone. We have Kristen Dow, the Director of Health and Human Services for the City of Portland, Nanette Irabaruta, the Director of Public Policy and Advocacy for United Way of Southern Maine, and we will have Mufalo Chittum, the Executive Director for Maine Immigrants' Rights Coalition. Mufalo is running a few minutes late, so she'll be joining us in just a little bit. But I want to get started looking at some of the issues that were discussed in the first couple of stories in the series. Those stories were looking at why are asylum seekers leaving their home countries, why are they choosing to come here, and why are they choosing to specifically come to Maine. So Kristen and Nanette, maybe the two of you can start by delving into that question. I don't know who wants to go first.
I'm happy to start. And then I will turn it over to Nanette. I would start by just talking about I think, you know, one of the reasons they're fleeing and they're coming to Maine is safety. And I think that you covered that in one of the pieces. Is Maine is known as a place that is safe and welcoming. Portland, but Maine in general. And when they are coming here, they are looking for a place to establish community, to establish a life, and resettle in the United States. And that is what we really have seen at the City of Portland through our shelters, primarily.
I mean, you all just said it. It's just safety. You know, when you make that decision to leave everything you have known behind, your family, your friends, your country, to seek asylum. You do it because you want to live, because you want to have a life. So most of us who have made this hard decision, we really do it so that we can have a better life and we can keep our lives.
And Kristen, can you also talk a little bit about, like, I know the City of Portland tracks very closely, or at least relatively closely, you know, how many people are coming here. Can you talk a little bit about how many people we've seen arriving lately? And is there anything like in this particular moment that is is driving people to come, not just the safety, but like, I don't know, maybe there are larger trends that are causing them to leave.
Sure, absolutely. And I'm going to preface the numbers that I'm going to give you with something that Mufalo and I know we both have talked to you about. And every time that we get asked this question, it's important for me to state the numbers that I am presenting. I can only speak to the City of Portland run shelters and who is presenting at the City of Portland. There is no tracking mechanism right now for anyone who comes to the state. So they could be going to another municipality, they could be going to another shelter. So the numbers are not everyone who is in our state. And I think that's a really important thing to always say before I say those numbers. So I think it's been pretty well known that since January 1st, we have seen a spike in numbers arriving at our city shelters. And since January 1st, as of today, we have seen 1,503 asylum seekers arrive, seeking emergency shelter or supports in some way, shape, or form in the City of Portland. That is both singles and families. Total, we have definitely seen an increased number of the trend you're kind of talking about, Rachel, is one trend that we have seen is a large number of single asylum seekers that are coming through our prevention and diversion program, arriving at 39 Forest Avenue. And that is something that we have seen. And, you know, we are currently, you said it before, we were at capacity in our shelters. And so we're not, you know, formally tracking every single family that may come, because we are at capacity and we're putting people on self-directed housing searches. But we currently, through a variety of sheltering methods, the City of Portland is sheltering 1,374 people.
That is a lot. That's crazy. So I do want to talk a little bit about what life is like for them, like on a day-to-day basis here. I mean, Kristen, maybe you can talk about like the shelter perspective and what it's like for them as they're staying in the shelters. And then Nanette, I think maybe, I mean, I know you have firsthand experience as an asylum seeker yourself. So maybe you can talk about what you know about just kind of what the day-to-day life is like and what some of the challenges are. Oh, and here's Mufalo.
I'm happy to go first. I don't know if you want to welcome Mufalo.
Yeah, I will. Oh, I will. Mufalo, welcome. We just maybe I'll backtrack and give Mufalo a chance to weigh in on our first question, if that's okay with everyone. So Mufalo, we got started talking about some of the issues that were raised in our first stories in our series, which were about why asylum seekers are leaving their countries and why they're choosing to come to Maine. So would you be able to weigh in on what you're hearing from the asylum seekers that you work with about why they're leaving and why they're choosing to come here specifically?
Yeah, thank you. And again, I hope, sorry, I, just came from having a meeting with the governor. So we were talking about, just that, because that's the question. It's not just, people asking, Maine state leaders are asking that, municipal leaders are asking that. And, as much as we want to understand why, we will not exactly, know why, because everybody's story is different. What we hear, is, and what you've heard in since 2019, every country is different, but everyone's story is something that's close to their heart, that, but we, migration is not new. This is happening around the world. Instability around in different countries that may be economic, maybe political, maybe, so those are, just generally, information that we know. But I'm also just, I was just saying in my prior meeting that, yes, we want to know why, but that is just like, we're just, curious, like it's just, normal, to just know why. But why they're choosing Maine, and somebody just reminded me, is because Maine has demonstrated the willingness, to try to settle people. And that is huge, because every time we have done that in 2019, 2020, 2021, and way even just my own coming to Maine in 2000, that's almost 22 years ago. It's because there was a willingness for someone to resettle someone, and that's why I came, and that's why people come.
It does seem like Maine has seen like Kristen was just giving us some numbers, and she said the city has seen like 1,500 people come since January 1st. I mean, it seems like that is a larger influx than in years past. Do you have any insight into why that is? Like why those numbers might be picking up?
People come for people. Our communities have grown. When I came, those communities saw growth from different people. And if you're looking at the populations that are coming, that is one of the most biggest communities here. So they've created a community, and so those numbers, yes, will be high, and they'll continuously be high as long as folks are here and are building communities. So yeah, that is what we see. I was just again, my work is my life, so I see this in the community.
So right before you got here, I had just posed a question to Kristen and Nanette, and I was asking them about what day-to-day life is like for asylum seekers once they're here. So I don't know who wants to go first on that question. Maybe Kristen, if we want to go back to you, maybe you start by talking about what life is like for the asylum seekers that are in the city shelters, and what are some of the challenges.
Sure, absolutely. I think we're still using a variety of shelter methods right now. We have our mass emergency temporary shelter at the Expo, which has 300 individuals. We have our family shelter proper, which is more apartment style. And then we have some of the use of some hotels that we are still currently using. And I would say, I'm saying that because I think everyone's experience during the day is a little bit different, depending on the type of shelter you are staying in. Mufalo and I, we talk regularly, and we have had a lot of conversations about people going out during the day and making sure getting connected to resources. That is something that we're really focusing on. Having, community resources, getting people connected to whether it's English classes or whether it's ILAP for asylum paperwork. There's a variety of different things, and getting people out into the community. One of the first things that we see families do when they come is to enroll their children in schools. So, children are enrolled in schools and they're going to school. That is something that is part of daily life. We do provide 3 meals a day at our mass shelters. But if someone is staying at the family shelter, they have a kitchen to cook in, which is definitely preferred. They can cook the meals that they want and the food that they want. And we provide vouchers for that food through general assistance. And so those are some of the things that a day in the life would be like. And we are also at our single shelter at our homeless services center. We do things like trying to connect if someone can work, trying to help them get their work authorization. And then we're getting things lined up for when they do get their work permit, and how someone can successfully gain employment once that happens.
Thank you. And Nanette, I know you have like some firsthand experience with what it's like as an asylum seeker. Would you be able to share that?
Sure, yes. I will say that there are things that I've been through when I first came here that we are still seeing today. For example, when I first arrived and I was in the shelter, you will get up in the morning at 7 and you were out the house, and you won't be allowed to come in until around 5 p.m. So it was January when I first came here, so snow everywhere. The only refuge that I had at the time was the library in Portland, and that is where I will go to spend my day and connect with communities and understand what was happening. And that is also something we are seeing today. Not like the family shelter that Kristen just talked about, where they have a place they can make a meal They are at the shelters where in the morning you get up and you are kicked out, if I may use that word, and then you are allowed in at the end of the day. So one thing that can be really difficult, being in a new country where you don't speak the language, where you don't know anyone, in some cases, is just feeling lonely. 7, 8 in the morning to 5 p.m., those are a lot of hours to spend alone. So it's not easy for sure. And people some are lucky, have made connections here in Maine where they can be picked up and spend time with people that they have made connections with. But there are others who are, still trying to find a way to make Maine a place of their own.
Mufalo, I know your organization is also very involved in helping people assimilate and finding shelter right away. Is there anything you would add about kind of what the day-to-day looks like for these people and what some of the challenges are?
Yeah, I think to the next point, folks are in, your life is going to be around based on which system is keeping you. We are, running a shelter that has two spots. A day, folks stay in, in the YMCA, and then at 5 o'clock they walk down to the Salvation Army. So in between that, they can, hang out, they can stay at the day shelter, or to Nidet's point, some have connections, they go out, they're trying to leave. I was reading this morning, somebody shared an article in the Guardian about the life of an asylum seeker, the mind of an asylum seeker. It's about waiting. It's just waiting. So wherever they are, because as they come into the country, they're waiting to, can I stay? Because so their lives is going to be for the longest time waiting. So what you do, whilst you're waiting, folks, systems around are trying to create, maybe English classes but at the core, it's a life of waiting. Your children, you're going to enroll them in school, but you don't know whether you're going to stay in that shelter for long. You're going to move to somewhere and then keep waiting. So it's based around waiting, and that's challenging too, because you can't create anything permanent. It's almost temporal, systems. Even when they go into their own homes, they're still waiting, waiting for, are they going to stay or not? And that's very challenging but outside from that, they're resilient people. I was at a wedding and I had, some of them there because they know someone, so they're also in that waiting, trying to normalize their lives, as challenging as they are. The kids are, in games, they are playing games, they are in summer camp, they're trying to live a normal life. And, the thought also about, the life of an asylum seeker. It's just any immigrant that comes in a new place. You're just trying to, acclimatize, trying to learn the system. And yes, it's challenging to start, but I think it's also, I think for them, once they feel a sense of safety, so they engage in the community.
Yeah, I mean, at the same time, I'm sure like those kinds of experiences with so much waiting, I know from asylum seekers I've talked to, it's really frustrating. So one question I have for all of you also is, what can we do to make it a little bit easier and to maybe reduce that waiting, or just make it easier to assimilate into life here? And maybe Nanette, do you want to start with that one?
Sure. I would say the issue of asylum seeker, it's really at the federal level, as we have heard a lot about that. But I do believe that there is really a way to help some of these asylum seekers who are coming. And one thing I will share here is when we really arrived here, most of the thing, at least for me, when I first came here, the first thing I wanted was to go to work, do something to keep myself going, allow me to work so that at least I can be able to buy the food I want to eat, because not everybody wants to eat the food we serve them every day. And it's not being ungrateful, that's what we hear most of the time. No, it's because your system, your body is not used to the food, for example, you are giving. So one thing I will really say, let's find a way to advocate at the federal level so that it can allow these asylum seekers to work. Let's be honest, Maine needs workers. That is something we all can agree on. We need employees, and most of these asylum seekers are ready. If you call them tomorrow and say, you are allowed to work, they will show up and they will come and work. Give them that right so that they can work and they don't become a burden to the state or to our cities, like Kristen was saying. That is one thing we can do right now to support asylum seekers, but it's gonna take our state, it's gonna take us, Mainers, to stand up to our federal government. I understand there's nothing in the law that says that can happen tomorrow, but still I will challenge that and say, we can have what we didn't ask. We can know if that is not gonna happen if we don't stand up and say, let's try and see if that can happen.
I think you brought up really good points, and I want to come back to what can we do at the state and federal level. But first, I also want to give Kristen and Mafalo a chance to weigh in on the same question.
I'll let Mafalo go next.
Yeah, there is a bill right now at federal level reducing the time somebody waits to to get a work permit to 30 days. But we know that immigration has been immigration system is, like we call it, broken, for a long time. And yeah, it's, I think the tough part to even me thinking about that is there's not going to be a solution tomorrow. And so in what you can do, yes, to Ninette's point, is advocate, to our congressional leadership in our state, Senator Angus Kings and Susan Collins, their bill rights, support that. But we know that there's more challenge, even with, at federal level for that to go somewhere. But as long as we keep it in their faces, they're reminded that people are, pushing this, they support this, they want this. But you cannot push something that you are not connected to. So for you to connect to asylum, it's hard for me to even just keep using the asylum because that's so much, this whole, like, just the term itself, it's like, it's especially in the last four weeks, it's like negative, and there isn't anything positive coming out. It's almost, it's tied to, so just people in one city, they said, who should we call? How should we call them? Like, okay, well, new Mainers, those are new Mainers. Somebody like, this whole like asylum seekers is just very, has been tough, the tough words. I heard this morning in one of the sessions that my staff was leading, they were asked in their panel to, like, when you hear the word, Fatma asked, the audience, when you hear the word asylum, what comes out of your mouth? What's the first word that comes out that you think of? And words went out. There's fear, there's anger, there's everything. So, but, you know, we want to humanize them so that you can feel a reason to even say they should have this food, they should have this job, they should have. So that's what you can do, is know someone outside from just the tema. I want to know I want to know these new families that are coming. You know, I want to know these new children that are in my school with my child. You know, so that's what you can do, is know someone so that it can go beyond the term, but the human behind that. Then you can pick up the phone and say, you know, my counselor, we want this because, you know, we are connected to this family. My legislature, you know, we want you to pass this. You know, our congressional staff, we want you to pass this. So, you know, get to know someone so that it goes beyond the term. It's the person behind that.
Do you have any tips for that? I mean, I know even as a journalist, I feel like it can be hard. Asylum seekers are in a very vulnerable spot. They may feel reluctant to share their story. A lot of them don't speak English. I mean, do you have tips, not for me really, but just for like the general public, if they want to know who the asylum seekers are on like that more personal level, like how would you suggest going about that?
I think we've created opportunities right now. You know, we do have shelters. There are people at the expo. We do have, you know, we're running shelters. We've created opportunities, volunteer opportunities. We have a volunteer, you know, like we have running a food program. We have a volunteer, program where you are part of that. You meet the people who are behind those services, because you gotta connect naturally. You know, you find ways, but how you get into their spaces. There's some that go to different, churches. There's some that are in school, especially in school. If you have children, you know, they're playing sport, they're doing this. So it's got to be natural and organic. You know, you can't just, we used to have pen pals or something. Maybe we start a pen pal, but we tried that. We did adopt a family. It was good until it just became challenging, you know, but we're trying to create, opportunities for people to help in a natural way, but also connect to them, you know, where they are. In the library, you know, Ned talked about that. Like, it's like when you're trying something very hard, you know, it's difficult. But if you naturally get into spaces where you find them in the grocery store, but I know it's challenging to see people from away that don't speak the language, but there are things that connect us. Food, regardless of where you are, connect you. Sports connects you. So there are natural things that people can do, you know, to know someone without really saying, I want to know you.
Yeah. And Kristen, what about from your perspective? Do you have anything you would add about what we can do to get to know the asylum seekers better, to help them assimilate and make the whole experience a little bit easier?
Yeah, I think I would take what Mufalo said, and I would look at it from a municipal perspective as well as a service provider perspective, and that is to engage the community and listen. And don't make assumptions that you know what a certain population needs. And that could be asylum seekers, that can be people experiencing homelessness, whatever the case may be. If you are in a municipality in our state or are interested in something in our state, one of the best things you can do is reach out and say, can we bring people together to have a conversation about what those in our community needs? Maybe it's a community meeting. Maybe there are agencies who are wanting to serve individuals and families, or maybe in their school department, and use those resources to facilitate these conversations. One of the best lessons learned from 2019 was with Mufalo and other community organizers and community leaders around not making assumptions on what people need, and bringing people to the table and asking and listening.
And kind of on a related note for all three of you, I mean, I know we certainly hear these kinds of things in the paper sometimes. Do you ever get like negativity towards the asylum seekers or the new Mainers? And if so, I mean, how do you go about countering some of those attitudes or misperceptions that might be out there? I don't know if anyone wants to start.
Yeah, I can start. I mean, we, 2019 was, again, just us, to Christian's point, being at the table. And, we got, and we still get, even in the last, 2-3 weeks when folks, went to found housing or, in Sanford, we get hateful, mean, and people email us and text us and call us and leave all kinds. We can't control that. I think back to my point is, if you only got to know the people, Christine talked about making assumptions, and from different places, their backgrounds, but as we have been asked for 2 weeks, when Title 42 ended, there was just so much, negativity, nationwide, statewide, anywhere. We saw things being written in schools somewhere. We were in a council meeting where people were just saying, get them out of here, take them back, and it's hard, it's really hard, to hear that. But it's not my business to change your mind, about someone. And again, this whole idea of trying to make somebody feel good, that's too much work. And so we will, for us, we will respond, because we're a service provider, an organization that, is there to advocate for people, is there to provide service, connect them to resources. We'll continuously do that. That is just the humanity. That is a humanitarian crisis. In a crisis, you don't get to choose how you support. You're just there to feed, to do something. And if somebody is mad, angry about that, we can't educate you. We can only make you see the people behind, the crisis, if you want to do that. So I think it's not my work to make you feel good or make you, that's a lot of work to do. That we should spending our time to serve people versus to make people be okay. It's only when you get to know someone, then you'll be like, well, maybe they're not so bad. But the other piece is this. The other part is there's been so much fear because people don't know. There's never been anything like this before. And so when people don't know, then there's fear, there's anger, there's, curiosity, there's everything. But as leaders, it's our responsibility to just be there and respond to the needs based on our capacity.
I agree with what you all say, Mofalo. It's really a difficult place to be as an asylum seeker. When I hear, for example, your question, Retro, yes, people, we are human, and sometimes our actions and reactions depend on what we know. So we will react based on the information we have about others. And that it's a human nature. And when it comes to asylum seekers here in Maine, I will say, sure, it makes sense because people are curious to understand what and question why these people are coming here. Why are they choosing to come here in Maine? And I think it's all of us, our responsibilities. To what Mufalo said, I completely agree with that. And I also want my neighbors, who are asking, why are you here? You should go back. Maybe I want to give them a chance to have the conversation. and say, maybe I am here because of this and that, but I'm not going to make it a job to do that work. Maybe if the environment in that moment allows it to do it, I will do it. But if it doesn't, I will just pick up and go my way. It's really a hard place to be in. And I've been there in the last 11 years. I've been in here in Maine. I have heard it all. But to Mufala's point, we are resilient people. We've been through so much before we got to Maine. And if we took what has happened to us prior to getting here, we just shovel whatever is coming to us in the moment and keep going. But there's a way for us as a community, as those who have been here before me and those who are coming after me, to really have a conversation. Because in the end, we are all trying so hard to live the next day. And there's no one here who can tell me that they don't want to see the sun rise tomorrow, because that's what we all strive to see in our lives. So let's have those conversations if we can have them. And if we can't, then we can't. We do live in a divided society. It's hard at the political level and at the economic level where we are today. And that is something we have to keep in mind too when we are trying to help others.
Well, thank you for being part of this conversation. I mean, I feel like you're addressing it, and I'm sure it gets tiresome if people are always asking you, like, why are you here, and those kinds of things. So I appreciate you coming to talk to us. Kristen, did you want to add anything?
I would just say, at the city shelters, we will provide emergency shelter to anyone who presents. I definitely know that there have been some challenges and some hard conversations that Mufalo and I have both been a part of that talk about, who we're sheltering and where, and that is a really hard conversation, but we are not, we are, if someone is in need of emergency shelter, we are providing them services. And, hate has no place here. And that is something that in Health and Human Services Department at the City of Portland, we care for our most vulnerable populations, regardless of age or race, gender. That is absolutely what we do and what we focus on.
Do you, Kristen, for you, do you ever get people asking you, like, is the city providing shelter to asylum seekers? Is that coming at the expense of providing shelter for like the chronically homeless? And if you get that kind of question, like, what do you say to those people?
I wouldn't say I have received that direct question, but I think it's been alluded to before. And I would absolutely say what I just said, that we will provide emergency shelter to anyone who presents. Do I think we have enough emergency shelter in our state? Absolutely not. Not when we are having 60 or 70 people arriving every single week who are experiencing homelessness in some way, shape, or form. And so we need more emergency shelter and what that looks like in the population. There can be specialized shelters. We have seen that. We have seen it work. And there may be some specialized services for asylum seekers, but right now the way we operate in our low barrier shelters is providing emergency shelter to those who need it.
Can I say something here? Because one organization that has been getting that piece about you took our place. And I have a conversation with Kristen about this, that there was no intention, and Kristen, correct me if I'm wrong, there was no basically, you just made the effort to, like, you take it, you don't. I may be wrong. People have been coming since COVID, being sheltered and staying in their places. And so we got this to say, you took our place, now that those ratios are that way, it's a fact, they're that way. But it is, our board chair, puts it very nicely to say, when people are made to compete for scarce resources, it pits marginalized communities, against each other, creating disunity. And it is not the people, it's the systems that are so scarce that the marginalized communities are going to compete, and thereby, pitting themselves against each other, creating disunity. And this is where we are in this situation. So we should be talking to the systems and not the people. So this is, we are as concerned as we are for any asylum seeker that does not have a home. Our homeless population at Back Bay in tents, we are part of that advocacy. We are telling the same thing to the city, house them. We're saying house them as people, but we're also telling systems to create the resources and create the capacity for folks, for groups to be able to access that. It is not the people, it is the scarcity of the resources, and that's what's created this disunity.
So I'm really glad that you brought that up, and I want to talk about the systems and return to Nanette's point about state and federal resources. I know Kristen and Mafalo, like I've talked with both of you multiple times about your desire to see more statewide coordination around responding to asylum seekers. So what are some of the barriers to that? Like, why have we not seen that happen? And what does it look like? What would it look like to you?
Well, I can't speak to the barrier. I know in Portland, we are one municipality. It is not appropriate for us to be coordinating statewide resources, which is what is needed. And what does that look like? I receive that question a lot. That is basically what we are doing at the temporary emergency shelter at the expo. We have the EOC model, the Emergency Operations Center model. It works. We set up an EOC and we have coordinated efforts for medical, for housing and shelter, coordinating services with community partners, and data management. That is what is needed. That is happening in Portland right now. It is working really well. And that needs to happen on a statewide level so that we can coordinate with our community partners and can share data and information. And there is one coordinated system. The White House has released a recommendation, a toolkit that actually speaks to that as well, that local municipalities can welcome people, can do initial screenings of individuals. It's a 5-step process. Municipalities take steps 1 and 2, and then the state takes over steps 3 through 5. That is the recommendation from the White House for receiving cities and states. That is what is needed. That's what we've been asking for a while now. And I know, like I said, you said, Mafalo has also had conversations around this as well.
Yeah, and coming from discussions around that still remains a request, and what we have seen over a year as we've been talking about that is, as people move from one municipality to the other, one municipality can't tell what that person has, what resources they have, and the resources don't move with them. So you have to keep recreating them every time you're moving from one municipality to the other. And so having the ability to get coordination at state level, will help inform municipalities when folks move into their town. Why it remains a challenge? at federal level, when they're coming into the country, that needs to be also created from there. So it's this again, this back and forth to like it's your state, it's a state responsibility. No, it's a federal responsibility, and then you're caught in between. Municipalities are caught in the middle, and they have to recreate their own systems. We saw this in Sanford when Sanford happened. We took Sanford over a week to really know who was in their town. What resources did they have? Systems, didn't follow them. You had to keep going back to say, oh, did you come from Portland? Oh, did you come from Freeport? But what did you do? We have other systems that don't function like that. And one of the things that we advocate for as an organization is, you can't allow this. If you put it somewhere else, you can't allow this system to continue. But it stems all the way from federal, where it's like, well, it's your responsibility, it's my responsibility. But when it happens in your town, each town is going to say, okay, we're going to do our own. And then you have all these makeshift systems, which we do have a model. Maine is a refugee resettlement. There's a whole system, can we mirror that? So we're hoping that leaders at state level, leaders in municipalities can sit down and have that conversation where you can really see, what we learned in Sanford was, well, there's a way this can be done. How can it be done? And that community really stepped up. The city, the communities, they stepped up, but they had to recreate things, that they shouldn't have if there was a whole, coordinated way to know who's in their town and what resources they've already received or haven't.
Yeah, I do want to go back to your point too about also trying to do some of that coordination at the federal level, but I want to give Nanette a chance to weigh in if she wants to on what kind of better coordination we could have in Maine between communities and organizations.
And Kristen and Mofalo just say it all. I think, like I said earlier, I do believe there's a way. We just need the will to do it. And there are models out there that we can look at in the United States and follow that. And if we can't use that, I'm sure across the world, there are models that we can use in communities that look like Maine in demographic, and that it's what we need to do. But to be honest, as me personally, I feel like that will is not there yet. Yes, the state government of Maine has done some work around this issue of asylum seekers, pulling some of the funds in there. Yes, the federal government have done so through their emergency food and shelter program. But it's not enough. We need to see more of that. We need to see, that coordination we keep talking about, so that if something comes up, we don't run just to Mufalo's organization or to the city of Portland. There is someone somewhere where we say, okay, they know where you should start and where you should go next. And that is what we need. Because to Mufalo's point, these issues of asylum seekers, it's not going anywhere. We're going to continue to see asylum seekers entering the United States of America. So we need to be ready for the next people who are going to be coming here.
So to go to the federal question, so one of our stories talked a little bit about the backlog of immigration cases and how people have to wait so long to get their asylum claims resolved. And I'm wondering if any of you have any insight into that and that issue around the backlog and why it takes so long, and is there anything that the federal government can do to kind of speed that process up? I don't know, Mufalo, do you want to start?
So the question is about to speed up
The backlog and the wait time, like why people have to wait so long to have their claims. Yeah, we hear anecdotally of people that wait 7 years to have their asylum case resolved. Like, is there anything that can be done to make that process go more quickly?
You know, like I said earlier on, that the immigration system has been broken, for years. We have seen and they've tried during COVID, to hire more staff, to create more office. They did this whole Ninette, I think you may understand this, first one in, first one out. They flipped things, flipped it up, they've tried to do stuff, but we've seen this bill. There's a big bill, during different administrations on immigration, and they just, it just keeps, they're trying at federal level. They're trying, I say this, and I also very, very, I see this in the city of Portland, in this now a state, is every time a system is responding to address a need, they are almost, by the time they're responding, they are like 2-3 days late, because, by the time they're responding, you are planning for 10 people. By the time you come to respond, there's 20 people. So you're always trying to play catch up. And it's been years. The state, at federal level, they've been trying to play catch up, but they have to hire more people to clear the backlog. They have to reduce the wait time. There's so many policies that have been tried at federal level that still needs to do to reduce the backlog. And like I said, they've tried things. They flipped something, first one in, first one, and that was hoping that they would, get through. But it's by the time they were doing that, there were more people that came. So as again, like we're saying, it needs to be an overhaul at federal level for that to happen. But the systems are the same thing that are addressing, our needs of more people, and so that will continuously be a challenge. But if you can also, the bill that I was talking about in reducing that would also get people independent of the systems. Ninette talked about that, so that people can be independent, whilst you remove the heavy burden when they can't work. So when they work, then they are doing the wait. If you're waiting and working, that's a whole different, way, and you don't feel that you're in the waiting, but you don't feel the burden of, needing state or federal, support.
Are you talking about the bill that would reduce the wait time before they can get work authorization? Yeah, I know that's a really important one.
I'm happy to take the question about, what can be done at the federal level. I think I always go back to this one conversation I had. I have a lot of conversations with the federal government, with the White House Office of Intergovernmental Affairs, and with agencies and cities and states across the country at this point. And one thing that I said to someone at the federal government who was really focusing on the detention facilities at the southern border and making sure they provide compassionate care, and nobody, I wouldn't say anything against that. We need to provide for compassionate care. But what I need our federal government, and we need our federal government to understand, is that compassionate care does not stop at the southern border once someone crosses over. Compassionate care is seeing people through to their destination cities and states, and making sure that they have the resources at their disposal to be successful for resettlement in our country. And making sure that the cities and states who are receiving them also have the resources. I think that people don't fully realize how really progressive Portland, Maine has been with how they have received asylum seekers as a municipality, as a response. For lack of a better way to say it, I think sometimes it's taken for granted a little bit, the response that we have had. I have provided technical assistance to responding cities like New York City, Chicago, Denver, New Orleans, the list goes on and on. Atlanta, large municipalities who are receiving asylum. I'm in regular contact with the mayor's office in New York City and Chicago. And
They're
because
asking you for advice on how to
yeah,
do
they're
this.
asking Portland, Maine for advice, which is unbelievable, really. But they are taking some of the systems and modeling some of their sheltering after on a different scale, but really per capita, the city of Portland is sheltering more people, more asylum seekers than these really large cities. But I think that is something that I continue to say to the federal government. And what I have said to the White House too is, if you have large municipalities like this who are reaching out to little cities like Portland, Maine, looking for assistance, something needs to be done at the federal level around that as well.
Yeah, there's an interesting reader question that we got. I don't want to jump too far ahead yet. I'll go to those at the end, but their question was, what other municipalities can we look to around the country for how they're responding to this? But maybe they're the ones looking to us to see how we respond to it. And Nanette, did you want to add anything about changes that would be useful at the federal level?
I mean, not much to what I already talked about in terms of work permit. First, I would say I am really grateful to the federal government and to the United States for allowing asylum seekers to come to this country. It's been really great for me as a Burundian who made the journey to come here to see the work that our government has done for asylum seekers to today. But we do still have a long way to go in terms of how we do the process of, getting into the country, trying to integrate in the communities we are coming to. Even when you get to have that work permit and start working, the waiting to wait 10 years, 15 years, even longer to get your to get your papers, your asylum seeking papers, while you are contributing to our systems in terms of paying taxes, it's also something we need to look into. Because I was, yes, one of the luckiest who have had the chance to be where I am today. But there are people who are here already and who hasn't had the people that they sought when they come here. But yet they are working and paying into the systems. But there's no one at the other end to look at their application and call them and say, let's hear your story. Let's hear why you are here. Because as you reported on, while those who wait are waiting, there's also that fear. Am I gonna get the papers? Am I gonna get deported? I was talking to a mom who came here and then had her baby here. And now the fear is, can I get deported? And will I be separated with my child? So those are really things that keep asylum seekers awake at night. While we talk about changes at the federal government, we need to go deeper in the systems that are already in the books and really dismantle them in order to build the new systems that will allow the asylum seeking process to go well. And I believe we can do it, because if we are doing it at the refugee resettlement level, why can't we do it at the asylum level? And I understand the pieces, the political pieces and the differences between refugees and asylum seekers. But to go back to what the other panelists talked about, it comes down to one thing. They are people, they are humans. It doesn't matter if you are a refugee or if you are an asylum seeker. You left your country because of one thing, and that thing, you know what it is. And if you can go back to your country, then once you are here, there should not really be that much difference. You should be treated as a human and be given that dignity that you deserve as a human being.
Well, thank you to all three of you for answering my questions. I know there's a couple that we maybe didn't get to, but I do want to get to the reader questions. I have some that have been submitted in advance, so I'll probably start with those. And then if people that are watching have questions, they can put them in the, it looks like most people are putting them in the chat. You can put them in the chat or the Q&A, and I will try to go through them in there. I don't know if we probably won't get to everything, but we have just under half an hour left, so I'll try to do as many as I can. So some of the questions that have come in already, aren't many of the very recent asylum seekers already working informally, off the books or illegally? Would someone be willing to answer that question?
I get asked that, a lot, and, we, can't, it's not even like we tell people, what to do and stuff, when systems are broken, it allows for, folks to try to figure out how to survive. So, it's something that like, so if someone says, can they, no, they're legally not allowed to work, and we try as much as possible, with ILAP, they have these sessions to tell them what's right, what's required. Majority of them, are, waiting to be able to work. And so we see that in our own shelter, we see that, around in the communities, people are just waiting to be able to be able to legally work, because they know that will affect their immigration. So that is something that we know that, people are not working and are just waiting, to be able to do it legally, because that will affect their application.
Okay, so what would affect their application if they were to be working illegally?
Yes, I mean, Ned can speak to that. You can't work. You're not allowed to work. And it was just not, again, whoever is employing you, is also, doing something that is not right. So, so that's something that we, tell them. But, I say this a lot. These are very smart people. They want to do right by the law, so that they can get why they came here was to stay here legally, to work legally. And so they are following that because they want to make sure they can be able to stay.
Yeah. Nanette or Kristen, did you want to add anything? Lots of people are stepping in to help and volunteer as people arrive and settle. What makes a good volunteer or mentor, and what are some common mistakes and misunderstandings that you have run into with volunteers and mentors? Kristen, do you have any insight with I know there's a number of volunteers at the expo. Is that anything that
I can, but I think Nanette, she unmuted, so I'll let Nanette take that if, okay. I would say, someone who is willing and compassionate, and just wants to make the connections, really. Obviously, we do background checks on all of our volunteers and those types of things. But it's like I said earlier, someone who's willing to engage and to listen, and to help someone really kind of assimilate to life here. It's very different. And what does that look like? And I think that there's a sponsorship kind of program that the federal government is rolling out. I think it's been a little slow to fully roll out, but that is, where an asylum seeking individual or family, it was one of the beautiful things about our host home program that we did back in 2019, was having families come in and stay with host homes, and to really learn systems, learn how to navigate a grocery store here, learn how to get around Portland, and cook using, the foods that we have available in our grocery stores, things like that, is something that is in our medical system too. It's very different. And so those types of things really would make, I think, a wonderful mentor and volunteer.
And Annette, do you want to go ahead with what you were going to say?
Kristen stole the show. She answered what I was gonna say. But as you were speaking, Kristen, I was thinking about when I first came here. I said a little bit how it was in the middle of the winter. Knowing where to go grocery shopping. You would be given a voucher, but you were not given a direction to where to go get the food. So it's those things that are really important. And then also that ties into the question we talked about earlier, of learning about the people who are coming here. That's where you get the chance to really understand why these people are here, because they're gonna share. It's by having that conversation as a volunteer or a mentor. Really, it's there where you're gonna understand more about the people who are coming here and their journeys, and also their dreams. Because once you get here, really, you want to make your dream happen. And I would say those volunteers and those mentors, they become your forever friends. They become your forever family. That has happened to me. The volunteers and mentors that I have had in those early days of my life in Maine, they have become my family. And today I call them family. And that is really, if there are people who are listening today and who really want to have that experience, it's really powerful, because it goes into also wanting to learn another culture, and willing to understand and listen, because that it can be a difficult thing to do, especially in today's world. If you are already hyper about what's going on, it can be difficult to listen. But I encourage everyone who's listening in this moment, if you can do it, do it. Volunteer and mentor someone. Those kids who are coming here and who are excited to go into our schools and learn English and learn about sports and everything that is happening in our communities, do it. If you touch somebody's heart today, you never know what can happen tomorrow. Just be willing to do it if you can.
I think you're right that those connections can be really powerful. I know some of the asylum seekers I talked to for the story I reported talked about some of those mentors that they had found. And I remember one woman was like, oh yeah, like my mentor, I forget how they had met, but she was like, she like babysits my kids. I like call her my mom now. So yeah, I think those connections can be really powerful. I'm going to go to another question from a reader. This is the one I was referring to earlier. What cities around the US or world can we learn from to better manage the housing and homelessness crisis? So I think that's a little broader than maybe just like the asylum seeker and New Mainer issue, but what places around the US or world could we look to as examples of how to handle this issue?
I know Kristen has, sits on these national things and but we're also part of a national, organization that we convene with advocacy organizations across the country, and just learn about what's working, what's not. One of the beauty, we went to a conference in November, and it's interesting because I think I look to Kristen too about this. Is across the country, Maine is responding in a way that no other state is, and as hard as that is, we are creating trends. We spoke about how we had to fundraise, again, at state level, advocate for ethnic organizations to be able to support the expo, to fast forward, support COVID, create that grassroots to connect so that you have culturally informed systems. As small as Maine is, which is why, folks are calling Maine, even New York, is because what we did in 2019 was never done anywhere. Kristen, correct me if I'm wrong. We created some models, even just how to resettle folks in the export style, and how we are responding at grassroots level to continue connecting culturally informed work, whether it's in health, in education, anywhere. We're layering that up. So there are systems that we are creating here that people around the country are learning from us. What we're learning from other states, basically, we look at how is your state responding? How is your leadership responding? How is, but there aren't so many systems that are working the way we are working, and we can see success. We can see that creating systems that are sustainable, but that still connects, that culturally informed systems. We look at some states in Colorado in terms of their resettlement, the way they are resettling people, as in creating transitional housing. We looked at some models in Arizona, about creating transitional, housing, so people can come in, have wraparound services. But even that, we are also very unique to how we're doing that. And so there isn't a lot out there. Kristen maybe has some, but we scout around the country and like, who's doing what? We get asked all the time, what are other states doing? Like, no, they're looking at us, what we are doing.
Yeah, I would just say that, it's different. So I think we talk a lot about destination cities and states for asylum seekers. And I think that the destination cities and states, there really isn't, we are the model for that. And but when I look at the people, other municipalities at the border, I would say places like San Diego, who they run a municipally operated shelter, but people aren't typically staying there very long. They are moving on. They're more pass through. Same with San Antonio. So I'm in regular contact with those cities who operate those shelters, but it's different because they are not resettling typically someone or individuals in those areas at the border. I did see a question, Rachel, if you don't mind, in the comments that asked about, what is Portland doing differently? And since we're talking about this,
I was going to ask you about that anyway.
and Mufala just touched on it. I'd be happy to touch on a couple of points. So I think providing emergency shelter, it can't be underscored enough that municipalities don't typically run emergency shelters. I know in Portland we do, but that is not typical really across the United States. So New York City and other large cities like Chicago and Denver, they are standing up temporary emergency shelters for these individuals as a city, which is something that is not, that they don't typically do. There aren't a lot of cities don't have, they rely on NGOs or community partners to run their shelters. But that is something that they are looking and kind of standing up an emergency shelter, opening the EOC model. That is something that we're doing. I would say engaging with community partners and non-governmental organizations is something that is fairly atypical. The relationship that we have with I host a weekly meeting every single Monday for social service providers in Portland to get together with municipal leaders to kind of talk about what we're seeing in the community, whether it's asylum seekers, whether there's unsheltered homelessness, whether it's in our shelters, what are we seeing? What are some trends? What are concerns? That is something that is not typical. And because of the relationship that we have with providing shelters in Portland, I'm a part of two different groups that are nationally. So I'm a part of a Cities for Action. So it's municipalities from across the country, as well as an NGO collaboration network who provides shelter. And one of the things we just recently did was we brought those two groups together because I'm hearing both are frustrated with the other. And that's something that we're doing really well in Portland is working well together with the municipalities. And I would say the host homes program. And then finally, we've been applying for federal funding for a really long time in Portland. And a lot of other cities didn't realize that they could be applying for some federal funding. I was providing technical assistance to Atlanta on how to apply for ESFP funds because they weren't sure about how to do that. And so those types of things, we're doing really well. And I don't think Portland, we talk about it enough, how progressive we are with this type of work. But when you look at it from a national level, it's really impressive as a city, but then as our community partners working with our city as well.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'm glad that you picked up on that question in the chat because I was going to ask you for some examples of some of the things that Portland is doing. All right, I'm going to go to another question. Housing is such an issue. As a layperson trying to help asylum seekers find housing, is there a recipe for this? It's probably a very difficult question to answer. What resources work best to help people find housing?
I can take a first stab at it. I was, just this afternoon, just thought about, so if I don't know, Christine, there's maybe 1,500 people, asylum seekers that have come in the last year or so. If we took them away, would there be housing? Would housing still be a challenge? In terms of affordability, in terms of all that, I think the answer is yes. So it's not the asylum seekers who like if you took them out, there will be a solution to say there will be more housing for anyone who lives here. Housing is still a challenge across the state. We've just been we just grow into that. When you factor in, people who are coming who are new, wanting those systems, there hasn't been a huge, now there's a bill that's, which is, I think, hopefully, going to be like 400 million to build houses there hasn't been a humongous, housing plan at state level that's creating that to respond to that in a long time. I may be wrong, Ninette, you're the advocacy person, you may have researched this. So you're still talking about the same structures that have been there, way before I even came here. And we're all now trying to, fit in, then you add people who have come, who are having new families, who are young, who are getting, and then competing for those the systems of how to get those houses has still been traditional. It's like, well, you go this way, you learn the English, you go online, you do this. But if you don't know English, your English is not your first language, you are already disadvantaged on how to find that housing. So we are now, again, to part of culturally informed, services is really trying to figure out how do you get housing, and working with housing navigators. There was a bill that passed, I think last year, created some housing navigators within certain organizations. We've seen that help. We have an organization here in our state, I think the Housing Coalition, who have housing navigators. We have organizations that providing Furniture Friends is an organization that helps, house. So you need to have different systems that help folks to like, okay, you're not going to worry about not finding a house. You'll be able to get furniture. You're not going to worry about if you don't know English, somebody's going to help you. But all these systems need to be funded. They can't just run by themselves. So we've been talking so much about lifting systems, but you can't lift the systems without resources. So that resources come from municipal level, at state level, at federal level, to Christian's point. So these are like, you have to recreate how to get a service every time you're talking, you're dealing with a community that is new to a culture and a state.
Once an asylum seeker has a work permit, what type of help can they get to help them get a job?
I can take that. I didn't get any help to find a job. From my experience, once your work permit comes in the mail, you open it, you just scream, I have this paperwork, now I can start work. But if you don't have that guidance to know how to find the work, you won't. So back to the systems, there are no really systems in place to help you figure that out. And I think with at least adult education, you may be lucky and take, the courses that will help you learn where to seek jobs or how to seek jobs, how to put a resume together, all of that. But outside of adult education, I will say I didn't see it. And I think that system need to be in place, especially when you think about how many jobs that can be opened out there, and knowing how to take the skill set that you already have, that you came with in this country, and know how to translate that skill set into the work here in the US, it can really be difficult. And sometimes that's why some of us, when we get that work permit, we end up going cleaning bathrooms at Maine Medical or somewhere else. Not because they might not be another better job out there, but because you didn't know. There was no a system to guide you and help you find that job that might help you. So yes, once you get a work permit, it's exciting because you're gonna be working and start making that money, but it doesn't stop there. And we need to also look into that and start thinking of ways to help people translate those skill sets that they bring here into the work that we find here.
What was your first job when you got here, when you got your work permit?
My first job, that was Subway in Falmouth. That was my first job that I did in the US. Yes.
And how did you find it, just on your own, or how did you find it?
No, I did ask. So it was really connections. When I have first came here, as I said, I got lucky with mentors and volunteers that I have met along, and they became really my go-to people. Every time I had a question, I will go to them. How do I do this? Where do I go? And that's how I ended up finding the job in Falmouth at the Subway.
And did you speak English at the time? Because I know that can be a big barrier for some people.
Yes, at that moment, yes, I have gained. So I first arrived here in January of 2012, and I didn't get my work permit until January of 2013. So I spent a whole year without that work permit. And what I did at that time was to learn English. I first started at the work learnings works, and then I transitioned to adult education. and that's how I learned English. And another thing I did for myself through my mentors and volunteers that I knew at the time was, please, every time I say something wrong, correct me, because that's how I'm going to learn. So yes, by the time I started working, I had some English.
Oh,
Something, yeah, to Ninette's point, I think Kristen talked about, state coordination. The other, again, there's been some organizations who are, don't have as much capacity to help folks. There's more people needing that support. And so most of that work is just left with whoever is, you are connected with. What are you doing? It's very still uninformal. There's some organizations, some of our members who have getting some funding, because you need funding to be able to do that. So there is been some progress, but the numbers are way too high. Asylum seekers don't qualify for a case manager that would work with you, say from the career center doing that. So without those services, folks are just left into the community. But the other reason also of creating, there's been some models that the state has done in SACO. There's and Christian can speak better to this, that has wraparound services. Somebody to help you with housing search, somebody to help you with school enrollment, somebody to help you with getting ready for a job, bringing, when you are ready, bringing immigration systems. There are models that, like I said, Maine is creating models, and those would help in a situation like, Ninette had, so, but how many of those can you, do we have right now? Maybe one, in terms of, but there's informal systems that are helping. The other thing also I want to say is our community, back to my point, they are smart people. And when they come, folks are going to know, okay, what language? Okay, you speak this language, call someone. When I came, like somebody said, oh, here, and I tell this all the time. When I came, Claude, if you know Claude got my husband the first job. So we get connected that way. And it's from community. If you don't speak the language, you just come from the same community. Say the same continent, somebody else is going to help you. And that's how people are getting jobs. That's how people are getting getting schools, in daycare, baby, all these support systems. It's being done in the community. And when people come and say, I want the Angolan community, it's not just they want the language, they want the system that a grassroots level. But there's some municipalities that are creating some wraparound services. We want to model that in different towns. But that's also the conversation that we continuously are having with municipalities, with the state today. It's just figuring out, what does support look like? What does coordination look like? What's working, what's not? So we are fortunate to have, leaders like Christine and the city that are open to even our criticism. We're not always just saying, yes, Christine. We're like, no, this is not working, and we do that everywhere, and we've seen some progress come out of that. We should be ready, especially when you have different communities, to have tough conversations. And doesn't mean that we're not appreciative. We're appreciative, but we know how we should be served. And so we should be trusted, we should be listened to, but we should be brought to the table to be able to recreate whatever that system is.
So unfortunately, I think we are out of time, and I'm sorry that we couldn't get to everyone's questions. But I want to thank all three of you for being here and sharing your expertise and your evening with us. This event is also recorded, so if anyone is listening and wants to rewatch it, or if anyone wants to watch it online, it's available on the Press Herald website. And again, also events like this are possible because we have loyal subscribers. So if you're interested in subscribing, you can also check out our website for more information on that. And thank you again to all three of you. Did anyone else want to say anything that I missed before we get going?
I just wanted to thank you for giving us this platform and for writing those articles. It was great to see that we as asylum seekers who come here can be seen in a positive way, not always in a negative way. We really appreciate you bringing that, and I hope that Maine, that the state that allowed me personally to be here and gave me a chance to be here and live here and grow here, can also continue doing that to those who are coming now. Let's get together and build this community in a human way, because the legacy we are building and the legacy that we're gonna leave for our children and grandchildren has to reflect from what we are doing today.
Well, thank you for participating and for sharing your expertise.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, good night, everyone. Thank you.
All right, thank you.